freedom. American Family Radio.
The enemy has pulled out all the stops to try to destroy the family for a very long time. That's why the American Family Association stands boldly in the gap to protect and strengthen this God-breathed institution. Visit afa.net today and discover the resources available for you and your family. And if you would, please take a minute to show your support. That's afa.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Robert Thornton. Washington, D.C.'s mayor wants a meeting with the U.S. Attorney General following President Donald Trump's announcement of a federal takeover of the district's police department. More from Fox's Jared Halper.
President Trump's declaration of a public emergency in Washington, D.C. and the temporary federal takeover of the city's police department is unsettling and unprecedented, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says.
I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past, that we're totally surprised.
The mayor concedes violent crime spiked in 2023, but
we worked quickly to put laws in place and tactics that got violent offenders off our streets and gave our police officers more tools.
The president called for Americans to keep visiting D.C., saying that he will clean up the city.
But people come from Iowa, they come from Indiana, they come and then they get mugged. Not going to happen. Keep coming, because by the time you get your trip set, it's going to be safe again, and it's going to be clean very quickly.
The move comes after ex-DOJ employee Edward Korstein was recently attacked in D.C. while defending a woman during an attempted carjacking. Explosions at a U.S. steel plant shook the ground near Pittsburgh and left at least one dead and sent at least 10 to hospitals today. Allegheny County Emergency Services said a fire at the plant began around 10:51 a.m. Eastern. A construction worker near the scene said the explosion felt like thunder. President Trump is scheduled to meet with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday to discuss a possible end to the war with Ukraine. Fox's Rich Edson has more.
Trump says he thinks Russia wants to finish the war, but acknowledged that Putin has disappointed him before.
I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin. And I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war. You got to end it.
The president says after meeting with Putin, he'll call Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders. Trump says Russia and Ukraine need to agree to swap land. Zelensky has rejected the idea, refusing to hand Ukrainian territory to Putin.
Australia will recognize a Palestinian state, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said today, joining the leaders of France, Britain, and Canada in signaling they would do so. His remarks follow weeks of urging from within his cabinet and from many in Australia to recognize a Palestinian state, amid growing criticism from officials in his government over suffering in Gaza, which Albanese referred to as a humanitarian catastrophe. A conservative activist says it makes perfect sense that Indiana is going to provide a detention facility for the federal government to house illegal aliens earmarked for deportation. More from AFN's Chad Groening.
Following alligator Alcatraz in Florida, the Department of Homeland Security has announced a new partnership with the state of Indiana to open a 1,000-bed detention facility dubbed the Speedway Slammer, which will house some of the worst criminal illegal aliens arrested by ICE. DHS says this agreement was made possible by the One Big Beautiful bill. Micah Clark is executive director of the American Family Association of Indiana. He says the nickname is interesting.
The actual location of this detention center is actually nowhere near the Speedway. It's about an hour north or more of Indianapolis. In fact, the Indianapolis Speedway is not very happy about that logo or that nickname. But what that is the former Air Force base called Grissom Air Force Base from years ago. And so there is a prison there already. There's 1,000 beds that are not being used. And it makes perfect sense to use that for this crisis we have with this illegal invasion that we had on the border.
Clark says he is glad Indiana is one of those states that's saying, hey, we've got space and we'll help out.
It was another successful year for Truth for Youth Bible Week. Evangelist Tim Todd of Revival Fires International is the organizer of the campaign. He made these comments on AFR.
We were able to meet our goal, and young people across America going to be giving Bibles to their friends in school that don't know Jesus, and we're going to see a great harvest of souls, and we greatly appreciate the partnership with American Family Radio, American Family Association.
And that is all our time for now. You can find more news at afn.net. I'm Robert Thornton.
Fostering and adoption is not a Band-Aid for infertility. It is a calling, and God can change the desire of your heart and make that so rewarding. It's the most beautiful, selfless thing. It's pure religion, but it's not a fix to I desire biological child. God has to deal with that in your heart separately.
Hannah's Heart, encouraging couples through infertility and miscarriage. Saturdays, 4 a.m. Central on AFR or on the AFR app.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio. I'm your host, Abraham Hamilton III, joined by the Corner contingent. Right across from me, my man, 100 grand, Mr. Bobby Rosa. And in the screening room, producer extraordinaire, often imitated, but never, ever, 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 ever duplicated. Successfully, that is. Many try, but like fish in New Orleans on a Saturday afternoon, many fry. Thank you for joining us on today's program to get your work week started. And we're ready to rock and roll with the show at this very moment. Many of you, if not most of you, are making your transition from your part-time jobs where you generate an income to your full-time jobs where you cultivate an outcome. And as you do so, I want to remind you to do so with intentionality, understanding the primacy that God places on family, welcoming that understanding to guide and govern your engagement, refusing to allow the world to determine for you what is priority. Instead, that you ascribe to what the scripture unveils and you refuse to allow the world to gain all of your attention, focus, diligence, and investment, only to neglect what transpires at and in your home. I want to encourage you to reverse that, simply put, because what goes on in your house is far more important than what goes on in the White House. This is not stated to diminish the significance of the occurrences to and through the Oval Office, but simply to emphasize the fact that you and I are directly responsible and accountable for what we directly influence. So as you're making your transition, recognize what you have the opportunity to do. For some of you, today may be the very first day that you lead your family in worship. Let me tell you, there is not a more important thing you can do with your family today than to direct them to the throne of grace, to emphasize the inescapable reality that you desperately need God. There are no things that transpire throughout our days that are more important than that. And so much of that can be taught, but a whole lot more of it will be caught. And among the things that we seek to do, and I'm right in the boat with you. If you've been listening to the show for a while, watching the show for a while, you know I have young children still in my home. I got 2 teenagers now in my home. When did that happen? Goodness gracious. But my hope and prayer for my children is that their enduring memory of our home and their upbringing in my home is that among all the experiences that they had with Maria and I in our home, that the most consistent feature of our home life was worshiping the Lord together. And they saw Daddy model his dependence upon the Lord, and that example would be what is enduring for them. You have an opportunity to do that. For some of you, you've been doing it for quite some time. You know, at our last homeschool event I spoke at in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, there was one lady who was there. You know, I was praying about coming to this event because I'm not new to this. I've been discipling my children through my home and from my home over 18 years. You know, and so I was even debating whether I needed to come to this. I didn't need the 101, homeschooling 101 type of discussion. But what I needed is what, you encouraged us with, which is to remember why we do what we do. The very central reality is that discipleship is the mandate for every Christ follower. Jesus has called every Christ follower to execute his commission. That commission is to make disciples. We get the opportunity to execute that command, that mandate, starting in our own homes. There will be a time that comes when I will no longer have children, young children under my roof. Should the Lord tarry and allow me to see that, that time will come. And I will still be required to be an ambassador of the King of Kings, an executor of his commission. But I get the privilege at this juncture of my lifespan to have young hearts and minds that God has blessed my wife and I with right in our own homes. And so we want to take full advantage of that time. And I want to encourage you to do the same. To the Word of God we go. Acts chapter 17. And I want to offer this as a reminder to you. And I pray that this is as encouraging to you as it is to me. In Acts 17, this is where the Apostle Paul made his appeal, his gospel appeal on Mars Hill, or in the Areopagus, as recorded in Acts chapter 17, verses 22 through 27. And this is where the Stoic and Epicurean philosophers gathered to debate the latest goings-on. And in the midst of this, the Lord moved the Apostle Paul to make one of, if not the greatest apologetic appeal to a Grecian, an Athenian audience. These are people who had no history in submission to the Hebrew scriptures, none whatsoever. So Paul is making his appeal to them. And this is what the Word of God says. Acts 17, verse 22. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription: to the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man, or one blood, every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us." I captioned this in my notes for today's show as, he ain't surprised. The God that we serve, brothers and sisters, is not surprised by the prevalence, the intensity, and the very nature of the insanity that we are confronting right now. Not surprised one bit. He wasn't in a Scooby-Doo episode, and the world snuck up behind him with, kind of the cartoon audio. And the guy's, oh my gosh, I can't believe you have a Supreme Court justice who doesn't know what a woman is. Surprise. Oh, I can't believe you have a wise Latina on the U.S. Supreme Court. God is not surprised at all. And I can laugh at that because I am comforted by that. And I pray that you are comforted similarly, because none of this has caught God by surprise. Now, of course, it doesn't nullify the fact that it's crazy. Man, it's crazy. It's crazy. But the Lord told us that there were perilous times that were coming, that men would be lovers of themselves and lovers of pleasure, insolent, arrogant, boastful, not lovers of good, malicious gossips, refusing to be reconciled. The Lord told us all of this would come. And so I'm sharing this with you to encourage you simply to take heart, because God knew all of this insanity was coming, But he nevertheless, as the scripture bears out for us, he determined before time the boundaries of our habitations. I've explained before that word boundaries, there literally means fixed borders. So the concept of borders is not a man-made concept. It is a God-breathed notion. Let's let that settle in, all right? If God is the author of the notion of borders, and I ain't talking about formerly opened bookstores. But in addition to him determining before time the boundaries of our habitation, and just on the boundaries point, just as by way of reminder, that there is not one of us to determine when and where we would be born. None of us say, hey, Lord, let me take a poll and see where I'd like to be born. Yeah, that's the thing. Let me see, where would I want to go? Where would I want to be? What time would I want to go? None of us did that. God in his sovereignty determined where we would be born. Even those who may have migrated to this country. I have members of my family. I won't go into a whole long deal, but I have family members who lived through the Sandinista rebellion and things that transpired in Nicaragua. All right? God's sovereign even over that. And then not only that, he's determined the time periods in which we would be alive. I told you many times, and I've been knowing her for a long time. People say, hey, you're an old soul. I told y'all I like the doo-wop era. Don't make me. Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. Don't make me now. Don't make. I got nothing but love for you, baby. Don't do it now. Don't make me do it. If I had an era to pick, I probably wouldn't have picked the 21st century. I'm just talking about myself. But thanks be to God that he knows better than me. And I am overjoyed at the reality of being alive right now. People ask me, hey, aren't you afraid of rearing children this day and age? And I simply say, no, I'm not. Because the God that we serve, the God that I serve, is faithful in every generation. In every generation. So I'm excited to be alive now. I'm grateful to be alive now. Primarily because my King has ordained for me to be alive now. So we don't have to shrink or wilt or panic our way through where we are. Man, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords has deposited us for this time, for this moment, for his glory. We get the express privilege to be a part of God's plan at this stage in human history. Yes, I understand how crazy it is. I report to you quite regularly some of the features of the insanity. Don't we talk about the foolishness du jour? That's some daily foolishness. But I reflect on what Jesus said. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. Why am I taking heart, Lord? Because I have overcome the world. Remember, we're not contending for eternity. We're contending from eternity. Those of us who are in Christ, we have been justified. We're not laboring to be justified. So, because heaven is our home, we know the end of the story. We know where we'll reside for eternity. What will we be afraid of? Well, like we said on the block, what you scared of? Man, why not? Give it all. Why not? Give it all. My daddy used to tell me, playing basketball on the summer league teams and the travel ball teams, son, leave it on the floor. Leave it all on the court. Leave it all on the court. Come back to the bench empty. That needs to be our posture. Because we know the end of the story. We know who deposited us for this time. We know that the fact that we're alive today and we're living today, the majority of you listening to me are, as I am, citizens of the United States of America. But shout out to our international listeners in Canada and Britain and in islands and Trinidad and I want to say it right. I'm going to just say Trinidad. I'm going to leave it there. Sometimes I mispronounce it. But God has placed us for this time. Oh, I can't forget. Oh, I probably shouldn't say that on the air, but we got some secret listeners in China. They hit me up. And God has planted us for this day. So why not give it all? Why not give him all? Heaven is our home. Our eternities are fastened in the palm of the hand of our King. why not give it all? Why not plant the flag for the King's glory in our neighborhoods, our local communities, our local churches, our states? Why not contend for the glory of the King to see not only the greatest nation in the history of the world to exist to date, but why not work toward our nation being populated by people who've come to know the pardoning of their sins and to know our Lord Jesus Christ in saving faith? Why not? Share the gospel, pray for our nation, and trust God with the results as we make disciples.
A Discipleship Minute with Joseph Parker.
God spoke the world into existence. God used his words to create the universe. God's words are powerful, but a very important truth that God wants to convey to us in his word is that our words are powerful as well. Not saying they're as powerful as God's, obviously, but they are certainly much more powerful than I think we tend to think. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1. A soft word turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Are my words fruitful? Are they words that honor God, that build God's kingdom? Or are the words I speak words that tear down, that cause difficulty, that make life tough? Proverbs chapter 16, verse 24. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body.
How do you find the tools you need to help you strengthen your Christian worldview or deepen your relationship with God? Of course, you can scour the internet for them, but even when you find something, you'll probably have to do more research to know if their theology is trustworthy. There's an easier way that eliminates the hassle and saves you time. Head to the AFA Resource Center. You'll find a great selection of learning and information tools produced by AFA, so you know it's biblically sound. That alone saves lots of time, but that's just part of what's available. You'll also find apparel to let others know about AFA or to help open the door for you to share your faith. We've even got American Family Coffee to give you a boost for those study sessions or to sit and enjoy a cup of Java with someone as you share the gospel. There's so much more than that, and I don't want to bore you by trying to list everything. So stop by today or whenever you can and take a look at all that's available at resources.afa.net. resources.afa.net.
Hi, I'm Jan Harper. If you are a pastor's wife, come be encouraged and renewed as you share your challenges and stresses unique to pastors and their wives.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat is coming October 28th through the 30th. You're invited to join us at Pickwick Landing State Park in Counce, Tennessee for 3 days of encouragement, renewal, and worship. Once again, Brother Bert Harper, AFA Director of Family and Pastoral Ministries, will host the retreat along with his wife Jan. Our special speaker will be J.J. Jasper of American Family Radio. If you've attended in the past, we'd love to see you again. And if you've never experienced a fishbowl retreat, we especially invite you to be refreshed and renewed. The per-couple admission price includes lodging, meals, and materials. Visit repairingthefoundations.net to learn more and register. That's repairingthefoundations.net.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat. We'd love to see you there.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. So according to the reports, the Trump-Putin summit has been set sometime next week. That will certainly be an interesting phenomenon as it comes to fruition. There is discussion going on. I think President Trump finally came to realize, maybe old Vlad has been delaying here. You know, hence the sale of weapons to, if you're watching the show, watch me closely, NATO. The U.S. selling weapons to NATO, who in turn gives them to Ukraine. So the U.S. can say, we haven't sold any weapons to the Ukrainians. What are you talking about? We haven't done anything there, you know. So we'll see what happens there. But today's show, man, you can fall into the category of, you know, we talked about how people deceive by commission and omission, how sometimes you have somebody who affirmatively misrepresents, but then you have people who deceive by omitting salient facts. Today is one of those days because as we've firmly entered the realm of infotainment, and I know my show is an infotainment show, but I'm not putting on an act. This is just me, and this is how I deliver information. But in the infotainment era, I guess it doesn't sell enough papers to give the information. So right now, many of you have probably been overwhelmed today by the sycophantic, predictable, repeated screeds of Trump is a dictator. Trump is a dictator because of his announcement of federalizing police power in Washington, D.C. And this is one of those moments where I just urge all listeners here to just pause for a moment and reflect on everything that you know right now. So some of the same people that are accusing President Trump of being a dictator are the same ones who told us for practically 3.5 years that Joe Biden was right as rain. There's nothing wrong with him. He is as fit as a fiddle. He is, according to Joe Scarborough, he's the fittest he's ever been. Told you that for 3.5 years leading up to the June 27th, 2024 debate. And then on a dime, they look like Deion Sanders in his prime. Atlanta Falcons punt return to Deion Sanders, how quick they reverse course. They changed. So, this is terrible. Joe Biden must go. I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. These are the same people that told you, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. While at the very same time, they get the CDC to redefine what a vaccine is. They say, get the shots, and that'll help you prevent contraction and the spread of schmovid. And then they have to admit, well, you get the shot. Does it prohibit contraction of schmovid? Well, nah, it doesn't. You can get the shot, and you'll still get it. Does it prohibit the spread of schmovid? Nah, it doesn't prohibit the spread, but get your shots. And look, those are just the warm-ups. That's the layup line lies. Let's not get to how, and I love how J.D. Vance put it, we're going to say it now, how they laundered she or shall never be president campaign talking points into official intelligence briefings. And these are the same people now who are telling you, Donald Trump is a dictator. So by now, are y'all going to buy that? Are y'all going to buy that? Let me explain what I'm talking about. Amid surges in violent crime, in particular, in Washington, D.C., President Trump announced today the federalizing of police power in Washington, D.C. Listen to and watch clip 4, go.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
Now, I'm grateful that President Trump cited the statutory authority that allows him to do this. And this is why, and I'm not trying to throw shots at people, but this is why civics is vitally important. If you listen, I teach a homeschool civics class. What is Washington, D.C.? What is it? Is Washington, D.C. a city like every other city in the United States of America? Or is there something different about Washington, D.C. than every other city in America? Anybody want to answer that for me? How many Americans know what the original capital of the United States of America was before Washington, D.C.? I'll just, lead in with that conversation. The capital of the United States wasn't always Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was established as the capital at a later point in American history, okay? But what is it? Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, is a federally held territory. It's not a city like every other city in the country. If you would notice, and this is the thing that I find hilarious, all of these talking heads that are talking about dictator, they're the same ones that were talking about dictator when you had Barack Obama and them talking about what did Russia hack the election? Oh, they didn't, and they couldn't have done it. No, how about you go back, CIA and intelligence agencies, and y'all bring me back a report that explains how they did it. But wait, Mr. President, we said they did. No, give me a briefing and a report that shows how they did it. Yes, sir. That's right, Pastor Call, Philly. The Constitutional Convention took place in Philadelphia. If you notice in the clip I just played, President Trump mentioned something called the Home Rule Act. Haven't you noticed that all of the people that are saying dictator, none of them are discussing the Home Rule Act? Well, what is the Home Rule Act? I'm glad you asked me. The Home Rule Act is legislation that granted Washington, D.C. self-governance. According to the Home Rule Act, the United States President, the sitting President of the United States of America, can assert emergency control of the Metropolitan Police Department for a limited duration. And this is what makes me so mad. Now, if you want to say presidents before haven't done it, that's fine. But to act as if you don't know, and some may not know, or for those who do know, to completely ignore that there is lawful authority granted to the president to do exactly what he's doing. To do exactly what he's doing. President Trump has the lawful authority to exercise emergency control over the Metropolitan Police Department, and Congress thereafter, because D.C. is the federal city, Congress thereafter has the lawful authority by passing a joint resolution to extend that authority. And this is just one of the things that is just so frustrating, that you have people so willing to lie, really to whip their voting base and their listeners and viewers and readers into a frenzy over something that is literally a nothing burger. Literally. What should be the most poignant focus that everybody should focus on is, why has crime gotten so bad in D.C.? Why has crime gotten so bad in D.C.? In response to this, and pursuant to this exercise of federal authority, the DEA administrator, Terry Cole, will lead the 3,400 officer Metropolitan Police Department for this temporary emergency period. And it's interesting. So you had, Mayor Bowser in Washington, D.C., who is not a fan of President Trump, who said, quote, "I'm going to work every day to make sure that this is not a complete disaster. We want all law enforcement to be identifiable, wearing by a uniform and a badge and a jacket so that people know they're law enforcement. But I'm going to cooperate with the president's activity." You have the Metropolitan Police Department police chief. How about this? Metropolitan Police Department police chief Pamela Smith confirmed that she had a meeting with federal authorities. And Police Chief Smith says that she was interested in receiving the help from the federal government to enforce outstanding warrants for criminal suspect. Metropolitan Police Department Chief Smith said specifically, quote, "There are things that the federal government is very useful for. This will be an opportunity for us to come together and collaborate on being able to go out and execute warrants, end quote. What do you think the police chief is telling you when she says that? Yeah, we have people who have arrest warrants who are roaming our streets, and we have not been able to detain them. So the assistance of the federal government in executing these arrest warrants, these are people who probable cause has been established that they had more than likely committed a crime. They've exceeded probable cause to the point where they've been affirmatively charged with the crime. But we have not been able to detain them, or for whatever reason, we have not detained them. So having the federal government's help to do so will be helpful. President Trump went on to explain, based on the 2024 homicides data, that Washington, D.C. has a worse homicide rate than Bogota, Colombia. So why, instead of, and it's because of the political gangbanging and, people that want to sell their papers and things. They want to have the clickbait. So, Trump derangement syndrome is what they're going to, but it's a losing formula, but they keep going to it. Instead of talking about the out-of-control crime in the area and the increase in violent crime in the area, you want to talk about Trump being a dictator. When the Home Rule Act is on the books. Congressionally passed statute is on the books. It's just it's just not surprising. You have a similar phenomenon, and this probably will carry over into the next segment. But with all of this, hair on fire, hey, I can't believe the Texas Republicans are attempting this redistricting scandal. I can't believe it jibes. Please pass me my tea. 1 cube or 2. Can you believe it, Wigglesworth? Aghast, I say, I am at these Republicans that dare venture into reshaping our Elbridge Gary manufactured salamander, hence the term gerrymander. What haven't you heard about? The Voting Rights Act? Haven't heard anything about that. Who started the conversation on this issue? How about that? And we have billion-dollar corporations that are media outlets. Have you heard any conversation about what began this whole phenomenon? That the Texas redistricting, the Democrat elected officials, they're leaving Texas to go to, stop me if you heard, Chicago. I'm sorry, no specific, Illinois. I know Illinois' districts are perfectly portioned, right? That beacon of congressional fidelity, yes. I'll answer the question for you. Take a listen to Department of Justice Civil Rights Chief Harmeet Dhillon explaining how this all started. It's clip number 2. Listen to clip number 2. No video this time. We just have the audio of Harmeet Dhillon. Clip number 2. Go.
So we took a look at Texas, and we found that 4 of their districts in Texas are comprised of these so-called coalition districts. In other words, to get to a special minority district, you have to add together multiple minorities or count on a certain percentage of a crossover white vote. And this is too complex, too weird, and too inconsistent with equal protection. And so we wrote to Texas telling them that even though that law had been struck down a couple of years ago, their districts are now not in compliance with the federal voting rights laws, and so they needed to take action to fix them. That is what triggered the Texas legislature and the Texas governor to call the legislature into session to put new maps together, and that is what caused all these Democrats to spitefully flee the jurisdiction to avoid there being a quorum.
Now, had any of these people told you any of that? See, what had happened was the Department of Justice was reviewing the Voting Rights Act. Reviewing the Voting Rights Act and found that Texas, and had the clip going on, among other states, that their districts were not in compliance with the Voting Rights Act. So the Department of Justice contacted Governor Greg Abbott to inform him, hey, yo, Governor Abbs, your state is not in compliance. Governor Abbs goes, oh, word. Harmeet goes, word. Word, son. Your districts ain't in compliance. So Governor Abbs, listen, word up. We got to get constitutionally right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a special session specifically to address this. But it wasn't the brainchild of Governor Abbott with this Republican cabal in dark rooms with cigar smoke and poker tables.
How much control, unfortunately, the executive office does have to direct a lot of these procedures in terms of amnesty, what they can do, even though Congress needs to step it up. And we know constitutionally they should be making sure that the law reflects the American position. But law enforcement is the executive branch. And if you're not enforcing the law, then the law is merely just on paper.
Jenna Ellis in the morning, weekdays at 7 Central on American Family Radio.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Climate change is truth exchange. This is David Wheaton, host of The Christian Worldview. When God created Adam and Eve, he gave them a dominion mandate to wisely rule the earth and worship God. Instead, man rebels against God and worships himself and the earth. This has led to all manner of foolishness with the environment. Cows and crops are bad, oil and gas are bad, and humans are especially bad because we cause climate change. Their failed predictions of doom and gloom prove they are false prophets. Romans 1 says, they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator. Hear our most recent program on climate change with a Christian climatologist at thechristianworldview.org, and then tune in this weekend for another topic that will sharpen your worldview.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
Without even seeing them show up, I could feel like the darkness.
Jamie Sanchez is another Christian business proprietor who has been targeted for his faith. His Drip Cafe was opened to serve and help the homeless of downtown Denver.
We believe sex outside of marriage and homosexuality is a sin in God's eyes. And the enemy and his minions decided to use that as a platform.
Jesus told us persecution would come.
I would see them, just the rage and the hate. I pictured them doing that at the foot of the cross to Jesus. And I just remembered what he said, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. And so I had to position my heart that way.
The Jamie Sanchez story is one of the videos of the Impact series at stream.afa.net.
It's been a crazy, crazy ride.
See Jamie's story and much more at stream.afa.net.
At Wesley Biblical Seminary, we believe God is raising up a movement across our nation and around the world who hold fast to the inerrancy of Scripture and the hope of holiness. We do this through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees, certificate programs, and even training for lay people. So whatever your next step is in being equipped for ministry, we're here for you. And if you believe these are the kind of pastors we need leading churches in the future, we invite you to think about giving to Wesley Biblical Seminary. Learn more about us at wbs.edu.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and 1-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. During the break, there was a request made. I have to provide a public service announcement. The request said, wait, going back to the beginning of the show, you introduced J. Mac, but you didn't say his name. Excuse me, my apologies. It's none other than Mr. Jeff McIntosh. I'm going to say that real slow. Jeff McIntosh.
He's a bad
Yes, he is.
man.
Yes, he is. All right, back to what I was talking about. Moment of personal privilege over. Why do these people consistently omit salient information like this from the discourse? I shared this with someone in a meeting I was in and said, well, I hadn't heard anything about the Voting Rights Act and congressional districts complying and identifying Texas as one of several states that were not in compliance with the Voting Rights Act, that were notified by the Department of Justice. Why do they exclude that? You know why they exclude that from the conversation? Because it doesn't fit the false narrative they want to create. Now, in the course of complying with the Voting Rights Act, if the results are the adjustment in the congressional delegation's makeup, then so be it. But it is hilarious that you have this consistent phenomenon that, you know, we can go through the numbers. We can go state by state. States like Massachusetts, that President Trump didn't win, but he had a great showing, but how there's 0 Republican representatives from the state, you know? 0. And it's just, you know, Illinois. Have you seen how those districts unfold? And there's a reality that this dates back to the founding era. That's where the concept, the term gerrymandering came from. Elbridge Gerry, with his district that looked like a salamander in the newspapers, excoriated him by calling it the gerrymander. That's where the term came from. All right? So I just... And I was surprised to see outlets like NBC and others that are saying, well, these other states have issues too. But it's just, again, another instance of the much ado about nothing. They're trying to take something that is not a scandal and try to turn it into one. You know, and it's just, it's feeding this balkanized society because you have people that will cherry pick, well, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to believe that. And regardless of what the facts are. All right. All right, I'm going to move on from there. Then you have this, which I thought Vice President J.D. Vance's description was quite accurate on this, where the vice president was asked whether he thought indictments were coming from this, you know, Russian collusion hoax. And he said they should be coming. Listen to and watch. And more specifically, he said he expects them to come. Listen to and watch. Clip 5. Go.
I absolutely want to see indictments, Maria. Look, of course, you've got to have the law follow the facts here. You don't just indict people to indict people. You indict people because they broke the law. But if you look at what Tulsi and Kash Patel have revealed in the last couple of weeks, I don't know how anybody can look at that and say that there wasn't aggressive violations of the law. What they basically did is they defrauded the American people in order to take Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points and turn them into intelligence by defrauding the American people, defrauding the intelligence agencies, lying about what the intel said. They would take something that supported a Hillary Clinton campaign talking point, and they would overemphasize it and exaggerate it. They took anything that actually contradicted that narrative, and they buried it deep. And through that, they actually laundered Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points through the American intelligence services. That's a violation of the people's trust. That's a violation of what our intelligence services should be doing. And I absolutely think they broke the law. And you're going to see a lot of people get indicted for that. Here's the thing that should really bother the American people. What do you want our intelligence community to be doing? I want them to be catching bad guys. I want them to be making sure that terrorists aren't going to kill innocent American civilians. I don't want them laundering Hillary Clinton's campaign talking points into the American media and giving them this air of legitimacy. It is sick and it's disgusting. It hurt the intelligence community, it hurt the American people, and it hurt the first Trump administration. We have got to have consequences for it, or we're just going to see the same play repeated again and after again.
And what he said at the very end is the bottom line. Now, I completely agree with and appreciate his expression of what we witnessed, man, is nothing more than the laundering of she who shall never be president's talking points into intelligence reports. I mean, if that doesn't put a fine point on it. And to think, I pit that concept against Ben Franklin's a republic if you can keep it, you know? A republic if you can keep it. And Barack Obama gets an intelligence assessment that says, man, the Russians didn't influence our election, nor did they have the capacity to do so. And he said, no, don't put that in my presidential my daily papers. Go back and do another assessment to tell me how they did it. And they're like, but they didn't. No, tell me how they did it. And you have the campaign's talking points that turn up in an intelligence report? I mean, they're just playing in all of our faces. And so the end of Vice President Vance's clip statement is the bottom line. If nobody is held accountable for this, what do you think the message will be? What do you think the concluding takeaway will be? Do you think the concluding takeaway will be, whew, guys, whew, we dodged that one. We better never, ever, 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 ever do that again? And to answer that question, you don't have to speculate. Just rewind the tape. What did happen? Oh, they were able to get this whole Russian collusion probe legitimized? Well, you had the nation all waiting. Whoa, man, what is Bob Mueller going to find? Whoa, oh, man. And all they did, after President Trump told you they tapped my wires, and they're like, tapped his wires. Nobody even has wires anymore. Like, man, y'all know what he means. Y'all, they're spying on me is what he means. Y'all know that's what he meant. And it turns out, they were spying on him. And then what did they do? They followed the hoax that was a hoax from the beginning, followed it up with accepting Jeff Sessions' resignation, the Russia collusion investigation, impeached the man not once, twice. And the second impeachment was for the very thing they were doing before he got in office. And they had the audacity to impeach him because he was trying to find out what they did. Huh. Did they stop there? No, they didn't stop there.
Navarro and Stone in jail.
Oh, yeah. Let's throw a couple.
And Flynn.
Let's throw some General Flynn to the pound with you, my boy. Jail time for you. Roger Stone. Yeah. Roger Stone, jail time for you. Peter Navarro, jail time. Putting folks in jail. Putting them in jail. Did they stop there? No. Don't stop there. Then they go even further. They tell you Mr. Joseph Robinette Biden was the most popular U.S. presidential candidate in American history. And said, and every one of you all, you take it. That's the narrative. If you don't accept it, you're an election denier. And we're like, wait, the most popular in American history? Mr. No Malarkey? Mr. Build Back Better? Mr. I Can't Leave My Basement? Huh? Mr. I Can't Get 2,000 people to show up at a rally? That's the most popular? Yes. You election denier. And then they just go on. Go on. Then they hit the remix. Hey, it's all like old school football, Vince Lombardi. If the 44 wham works, run it again, Sam. So then they hit you with, hey, by the way, Mark Zuckerbucks and anybody else, if you hear about this little story called, the laptop, that has all the markings of Russian disinformation. That's what it is. It's Russian disinformation. Where did they get that idea from? That's what they ran the first time. Oh, Russian collusion. It is so funny to me, people to say, we never said President Trump was an illegitimate president. Liars. Liars, all of you. Yes, you did. And so the jam was so good the first time. Well, play it again, Sam. This laptop story is all the markings of Russian disinformation. Then we get 51 intelligence officials to sign an official letter to say the same. And who organized the letter? Oh, yeah, that's right. The same dude that did the remix on the launder the campaign talking points into intelligence reports. Why am I going through all of this? That all of you know and you've heard repeatedly. I'm going over it again for this one reason. If people do not go to jail, it will happen again. Mark my words. Do you understand what I'm telling you? If people do not go to prison, I know how these people think. They will view their domestic espionage effort as a successful op. Do y'all understand what I'm telling you? Just like they did at every prior stage. They will view it as a successful domestic espionage operation that is simply, you have the formula in place. You know how it works, folks. Sure, we'll fade the PR heat for a season, but we have the play and the principles in place to do it again. And while I'm telling you, somebody want to answer for me why President Trump still has over 100 members of his administration that have not been confirmed with a Republican majority Senate. Somebody want to tell me why there are federal judicial vacancies that still remained unfilled as President Trump is sitting in the Oval Office with the Republican majority? You want to tell me why that's happening? Guys, I don't have to be Nostradamus. They're already setting the course to try to run out the clock. Because anybody paying attention knows the way this works. Washington, D.C., as we get closer and closer to the fall, closer and closer to the winter, guess what happens in D.C.? Switch, midterm time. All of a sudden, we can't do any business. We can't do anything. And then you attempt to box President Trump in to only what has already been done and limit anything else from being done. Guys, we've seen it. We've seen it. That's why it's not enough to have the information disseminated publicly. It's not enough to know how it all went down, and we have all of the charts, and now we have these gaps filled in, and we have Durham's index, and we have all this. If nobody goes to jail, it's one of the worst things that could happen for our country, because these liars will be emboldened. They'll fade the heat for a little while. Hey, you caught she or should never be president red-handed with servers in her basement. Bleach bit, literally taking hammers to destroy iPads, literally caught using hammers to destroy iPads, and the public narrative, that was just private information. It was all about Chelsea's wedding. It's private information. Comedy Clown comes out, lays out why she should be prosecuted, but then says, but no reasonable prosecutor would do it. He was covering for her. This is the same dude that was in the meeting. He was in the meeting when Barack Obama literally says, hey, we don't need that intelligence assessment. How about give us another one to show us how they did it? He was there. He was there. And these folks literally go, hey, they didn't catch us on that one. Let's go again. If no one goes to jail, and listen, I'm not a person who rejoices at anybody being incarcerated, but these people literally attempted to perpetrate a fraud on the entire American populace. Do you understand me? To crystallize the notion of a government of the people, by the people, for the people, right. I'll auto-pin you whenever I want. You suckers. You have the appearance of a republic. We run this. We don't care what you think about it. We'll be the people that tell you we're the beacons and protectors of democracy, and then we'll install whoever we want until you deal with it. Guys, if nobody goes to jail from this, it's one of the worst things that has ever happened in our nation's history, which is why, as far as I'm concerned, like a dog on a bone, I'm not going to stop saying it, because people need to be put in handcuffs. This is not about personalities or, what type of jersey you're wearing. These people, you want to talk about a theft. These people attempted to steal the country from the American people. And it is by God's sovereign grace that they got caught. It's not because you have a bunch of people who are so smart who caught them. No, that's not what happened. It's God's sovereign grace that interrupted their scheming. And they got caught. Indictments must flow. Handcuffs must be applied. And people have to go to prison. Otherwise, these wicked people and their acolytes and people like them will simply be further emboldened, and you and I will witness far worse things than this. Sadly.